How's it going, everybody? All right, let's get it rocking. First things first, after a disappointing day, it was certainly good news to hear that Leighton Vander Esch missed the game, but not going to miss the rest of the season. And he's such an important teammate for us, both on the field and off the field. And kind of looking back after the game he just came off of, I thought that was one of his very best games of the year. To know that he is going to be back, that's a big deal for us. And I was certainly pleased to see that. Anytime a player gets injured and there's a concern that it could be for a long time, you worry about the man first, and that was certainly the case with Jordan and then with Anthony. And so to make sure, I know Hankins has been out, so to make sure that Leighton is going to come back, just like Jonathan will, those are, although you never like to hear about an injury, sometimes you can hear the endings, okay, it's going to be better than what we thought, so I was certainly pleased with that. And then, regarding the game, that was, they pushed us further than we want to go. When you lose a lead, for a team that really prides itself on the end of the game moments, and to allow a game-tying field goal at the end, those ones sting. And that's part of the game that we really, really do pride ourselves in. And it's been one of the strong parts that we've had. So to allow a field goal at the end when we got our chance to go nail it and close the door, those ones are the hardest. And you have to learn from them. And it sucks when you're going through it, but you do learn from them, and we certainly will from ours. So with all that said, I'm glad to open up to you guys and answer any questions about the game or the week ahead.
And David Moore, Dallas Morning News. I know you're not looking for or want excuses, but with the attrition on the defensive side of the ball, your starters over these last three plus weeks, just the domino effect that causes, and is health really your greatest concern right now when you look at where the defense is and how you want it to play?
I think it's, I don't know, one of the concerns, but I do love the challenge of it, because there's also some really cool moments that come out of those times where guys get their chances to go and develop. I think Deron Bland's a great example of that. I mean, I love Jordan Lewis, and he is as difficult to not replace, but to, simulate and all the things that he brings. But to see a guy like Deron answer the bell and answer the challenge, those are sometimes the silver linings that you find in that. And I think Deron's a good example of that. And so on the other side of it, we'll just keep digging to find it. And I anticipate over the next few weeks more of that, to see, when guys can step up and go. And sometimes you have to tinker with the alignments and the who's going to line where and how do we go to just find that fit so we can completely nail it. And we'll continue to do that. But I wouldn't know if I'd say concern, but it does light me up in a good, challenging way, because we have put a lot of time to develop these guys, and you really want to see them nail it. And so it's kind of an exciting time too.
Answer for Telegram. 192 yards on the ground, the edge run, the reverses.
Reverses, that was to me the biggest disappointment, where we allowed that. And so going in, we knew this was an exceptional team on the perimeter to get screens. We have to tackle well in space. Reverses could certainly be a part of that, to try to get a guy with speed out on the edge. So that one was one. We also let up a 15-yard run inside in a man-to-man run defense that I was disappointed in. But certainly on the reverses, we can play those better. And I think it ended up being maybe 52 yards, on those three plays of the reverses.
Babe.
Babe Loffmer, Cowboys Radio. Dan, I believe it was a 3-and-out in overtime for you guys.
Yep.
Yeah. But you said you needed to learn from, I don't want to say giving up the field goal
Yep.
at the end of regulation, but what are the coaching points there? When you said we need to learn from that,
Well,
what are the coaching points?
Sure, and I love, if you go back and look at the last play of the defense in overtime, and I think it was Donovan and Nashawn and Barr, and just completely friggin' emptying it out, to go make a play and tackle. And that tells me a lot about how hard they want to play for one another, for their teammates, and knowing how damn important this is. If you just tonight go back and watch just that play and watch those three finish the play, I think it'll tell you a lot about what we stand for and who we are. As far as the learning parts to go, when you're in that space, on a scramble, do you get them in bounds, keep them in to make them use the timeout? All of those ones, sawing off the guy's outside leg. So there's the smallest points made that you want to dig into to say, could have I kept the guy in bounds? Could have I, had a different disguise onto this play, the running clock versus the stop clock? So those are, the lessons that we'll go back and watch again. And we kind of do that every week. Usually at the half or at the game, there's going to be a 2-minute. And I was pleased to see us come back and fight our ass off in the overtime. And so that was a good time. I wasn't surprised by it for sure, but I do think you'll see some real aggressive play on that last overtime play.
And keeping guys in bounds or attempting to.
Yep.
Not referring to Jared, right, because he was battling.
Yeah, he was battling for sure. It's more, it kind of, I had one 2 weeks ago that came up, and I just, kind of went to say at the end, that was the first one that came to mind. There's like a cover 2-1 with Trey against Houston. Hey, man, go dig for this, the guy's outside leg to keep it clock going. So that was the first one that popped into my head.
Dan Tauter of the ESPN, what do you miss most in not having Leighton out there?
Well, that's a good question. I think the way he has tackled so well this season, that would be the one piece for me. He's always one that just can, on the front seven, he's kind of the director inside, moving the guys around, getting the shift to go, getting things lined up. He's an excellent communicator, but I would say his tackling, his communication, this is a pro's pro, and he's definitely was missed. Yeah.
As you look to replace him, does it impact Mike at all and what
It
you've
will.
done with him in the last 5 weeks?
Yes, it will. And, how do we, utilize Micah some at backer and some at defensive line moving forward? But, yeah, you're on the right track with that, to say all hands on deck to make sure we can put everybody in the right spot to do their thing.
Michael Galpin, Dallas Morning News. The outside contain issues, do you view those as more mental or physical lapses?
You're talking about like in a pass rush regard, or like on the reverse that came out?
Yeah, I guess it's probably hard to categorize them all under one umbrella, but the end around.
Yeah, because if you recall, maybe in the early part of the season we got hit on some jet sweeps, and we said, boy, that's something. Like Chicago had hit one, and Tampa had hit one in the opener, and there was another team that hit one. Maybe it was Detroit, I believe, had a reverse in the first series of the game. But those are the ones that, hey, we dug into to find it, and so to have that one happen for us, was disappointing to see a long, extended run on a coverage that you have good vision on. So let's chalk it up to one that we've got to nail and go. We just didn't play it as we were capable of on that particular one. If you're referring to the second part on just Lawrence getting outside the pocket some, that can happen some with a mobile quarterback. I thought we missed, actually some of our missed tackles ended up being a couple of missed sacks on that one. So one of them was good that Micah missed because JK ended up forcing a fumble, but I'll never endorse missed tackles, so I'll put that on tape first.
On the third reverse, it looked like DeMarcus was in decent good position there. I don't know if he got hooked and you saw that as maybe a missed call, but was there any coachable aspect of that?
I'd have to go back and watch it with you to see. As I'm looking back on it now, the big one, we were down a player. Somebody was still dropping into coverage when the reverse happened. So I think it's more a function of having the vision to nail it right, because what can just frustrate you as a coach sometimes, you're calling a defense, to hopefully have vision to stop one thing, and it's kind of like, okay, that didn't work. Think about like a catcher or manager in baseball saying, okay, give them the 3-2 fastball, and then they rip double down the line. So you're trying to put in the right call, and even sometimes that doesn't go your way. So it'll something, be that we'll certainly continue to work on, but it was different than the earlier issue we had on the jet sweep on a leverage issue. This one actually we had vision, we just didn't quite nail it as we need to.
Got it.
Sorry, it was a long-winded answer, but it wasn't as clean as it needed to be.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. How do you juggle your corners right now? I mean, outside of Diggs,
Yep.
you've got a lot of guys that maybe can get called up.
Yep, that is definitely where we're at in that. When I was referring to would we mess around with some of the alignments and where we would feature people, that's part of the discussions today as we're going. So we have added some guys into that space, and now as we're moving on to train them into it, you'll kind of see some of that take place here over the next couple of weeks as we're digging in to find that right space for everybody. But add Mullen, we've added Alexander, we've added Sheffield into it. We've already have Nashawn here. So finding ways with, KJ already here into that group of finding the best fit of how we want to do it. That's really what this week's going to be about.
With Joseph, was that a regression or was that just him having a bad day?
That's a good question. I would say there's been definitely things that I've seen from him that I like. You know, he's a good tackler. You know, can make a play on the ball that we saw. You don't want to see anybody get beat on a double move, you know, that goes for a big one, because that really comes down to your eye discipline, knowing that, hey, this is a team that will do that. You hope that when you make some of these mistakes, you don't see the repeating of them. And that's what we'll really be looking for moving forward, to say, hey, let's make sure you don't repeat the same mistake. If that's the case, then you're really into a tough spot, because you're really not improving and learning from the errors that you make. So that's what we really need to see to make sure, hey, this, you know, has to be the thing that happened once, and that was a fluke, and cannot happen again.
Nui.
Barry Scruggs, NBC5 Dallas. Do you anticipate Kelvin Joseph remaining a star for you?
You know, we're going to work through all the stuff and dig in to find the best fits of the guys as we go through practice. But certainly he's somebody that we have faith in to do that. So much like you do with, you know, a quarterback or anybody, that, hey, this is, you know, we're going to make a change right now. This is what's best interest for the team at this moment. And then we'll kind of reassess everything today. And that's part of our meetings tonight as we're going through this today and into the week. But, you know, certainly the competition is up for that spot.
Mike, or sorry, you're not Mike.
I'm
Dan.
not. My brother Mike, but.
Dan, and then Jory of Yahoo Sports. Micah was talking about how the quick game has challenged some of the pass rush opportunities lately. I think you've touched on this in certain ways, but does there ever get to a point where if you see enough game plans like that you want to change some of what y'all do, or there's already that variability built into your system?
I think there's that variability built in, and this was actually a game that I thought they played more traditional in that space than other teams had. And so for us not delivering on those, I thought we missed some opportunities to finish Trevor, you know, in the rush and into the sack. So not being able to finish, I think, was as big a component as anything else, because once they got into, you know, some drop back game, it wasn't as unusual as, you know, some of the things that we had seen over the last few weeks. So it was more traditional in this game. We just didn't nail it in the same space that we needed to in terms of the finish of it. But like I said, I certainly expect us to do that. We've been on that space for a good part of our season, and I anticipate that to continue for us in terms of us moving forward and finishing and, you know, rushing the QB like we like.
Absolutely. And one more, Jalen Hurts has a shoulder sprain and may not go this week. How does that impact the game plan going into this week, your preparation, and how different do you think that offense looks with or without him?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer, because knowing where they're at or playing or not playing. But what I do know is, you know, some of the people that surround him on their offense, and they've got some exceptional players. So I would say whomever is there, they've got a lot of good pieces to feature. And most often, not all the time, but most often, Jory, the system stays pretty consistent. I'd say probably one that wasn't, you know, I'm referring back, was maybe my time in the NFC South when Derek had backed up Cam Newton, and I thought that was a lot different. And that made it somewhat challenging because the systems were so different as far as, you know, who would play and how they would utilize guys, their run game, and, you know, the receivers that they use, the tight end. I would imagine that would be all the same, and then maybe some of the specific runs that Jalen does that would change based on who you had as a quarterback. So I'd say, in my mind, maybe it's an 80% that would be similar and a 20 that would be different, but I can't tell on that. You know, that'd be a good question for you to dig into them and ask on their press conference coming up. So. Yes.
Clarence for Worcester Telegram. What you saying from Mike is take the playing defensive end, is that taking a toll on him?
Can you repeat how you phrased it? Yep.
Do you see the toll of the defensive end position taking?
I don't know if it's any more than defensive end than just the toll. You know, you could ask me about, you know, J-Ron and battling through injuries and where it goes. It's probably, for all the players at this point, a function of, hey, we're still, you know, on the back half of the regular season to go. But there is more chips and things that could come up. But at the same time, he's really playing relentlessly. So I would say I haven't seen any sign of him, not with his speed or with his instincts to use them. So all of that has been really good.
So they're still doing things to take him away. Why are the other guys not getting home?
Could you repeat the first part?
Why are the other guys not getting home? What are you seeing?
Yeah, like I said, in this game, I thought, well, if you're referring to just this game. Yeah, I was, okay, in the previous game, it was quite a bit different. You know, they just didn't drop back, you know, to go where we could feature into that space. Not to say they didn't at all, but they didn't do it as much. In this game, it really was more traditional in the way they went after it. And so we've just got to do a better job of executing our rush plan to go. When you're going to chip a tight end or a back, you've got to have ways to go in and mix through that. So I anticipate us fighting our way through that to get there. But it didn't change overnight, so I expect us to do what we do better.
Be it Trayvon Mullen or Alexander or Sheffield, those are all cornerbacks who haven't been here in camp. How do you navigate getting guys who weren't here when reps are so few in practice, making that assessment of where they are and how they can help you?
The good news is these guys have worked tirelessly to try to get up to speed. Here's the standard we want you at, and how close are you to meeting that? So Sheffield, I would say, came in with a little bit of background with it, and based on where you might have been, hey, have you called it like this? Have you played it like that? Mackenzie had spent some time in Minnesota with George, so he knew some of the information, and a guy like J-Ron or Anthony could, you know, be the code breaker to say this is just like so-and-so. But you do have to go out on the field to practice. And so we give those guys reps during practice to basically assess where they're at, to hear the communication, to see where they're at. And that's really the only way for us to know, because it's one thing I could teach you, you know, the system in the classroom and on the board, and you could recite it back to me. You may know it, that doesn't mean you can play it. And so getting on the field and making calls and checks at the time, that's kind of the whole art of it, and you have to give them reps. And so that's why in practice it is so important. So you may see on a practice script where a coach may circle 3 or 4 specific plays. These ones are for Mackenzie, and these certain plays here are for Sheffield, and these ones that we want to work this player and basically test them to find out, you know, are they going to, without knowing it's a special play, to say, can they deliver on this one? So we kind of go through that all the way through, you know, up to Saturday. Even when a player is inactive, we do that during the week. It gives us some belief to know where they're at.
Dan, your fellow New Jersey, and Bill Parcells used to always stand up there and say, confidence is born of demonstrated ability. So with Kelvin getting pulled, or whatever word you want to use,
Sure.
How do you get his confidence back?
Yeah, and I think that's the life of a competitor, isn't it? And I'm sure you went through that at some point in your career to know that, hey, I stand for what I stand for, you know, and I put the work in and I prepare, and I want to get this opportunity to go back in and prove it. And so that's really what I'm looking for, is those prove it moments to say, hey, this wasn't a, you know, a one-time thing, or this was a one-time thing, and I can certainly show that I can come back and own my role and do that. And so that's what I'll be looking for as we get through the week.
Brad.
Dan, Brad Sham, Cowboys Radio. You're talking about sorting through the corners and linebackers. If this happens in November, you're trying to figure out how to win a game. You've clinched the playoffs now, and I'm not trying to diminish the importance of any of the next 3 games, but as you're doing this sorting through, are you doing it more with an idea of what is going to help you when you get to the first playoff game?
Absolutely, that's accurate. Because I think you have to test and push and find out and put people in moments to know how that's going to look. And so, yeah, I do feel like that is the case, to make sure we're not doing any of this testing, you know, a month from today. We want to make sure if we have to go through any growing pains, so to speak, to find that, we certainly will. But we have really high standards of how we want to do it, but I don't want to have any guesswork after that time. There's always space for someone to move up into a new role, but at the end of it, we want to make sure we're not messing with too much. We've got an excellent crew that really communicates well and plays hard as hell, so we're going to do nothing to diminish from that. And if a certain player is not ready to take it to that space, then we're not going to put them into that spot. It's just too damn important. But there is some training that has to go on these next few weeks to prove it, so to speak. Prove you're up for the task, prove you're ready, and demonstrate that to your teammates.
God.
Tim, what do you guys like about Mullen, and is it a easy transition for him to come in and learn what this system?
I would say there's probably 2 spots that are easier to learn mentally than physically, and those corner and nose tackle. I know they're not the same person at all. They don't even sit near each other in the locker room. But what I have liked from Mullen, I've seen very good speed. I thought he could run. I saw really good length, and we've seen some ball skills. So, and I felt his intent to learn it, coming in early with Al, getting the space to go, asking the right questions. So I'd say at those two positions, it's probably easier to carry from one system into the next, just because there's not as many moving parts. Now, that's not to say your skill set has to be any different. In fact, it gets isolated so much, when you're outside at corner, much more so than any other part on the defense. So, but what I have seen from him, he's off to a good start.
When you have a guy like him come in, do you call guys that may have coached him that and say, hey, what's he like?
I do, but it's also important to have fresh eyes, so you can almost put yourself, I do this in the evaluation process, even if it was college or free agency as well. I think you have to, Todd, have your own fresh eyes on it, because you could very easily get caught into say, well, Todd said the guy couldn't do this and he can't do that, and then he's like, well, maybe he can't. And so I think it's important that you have all the information. They may give you a learning style, or hey, watch this game, but it's important for the new person coming in. If we were all new coming in, you'd want fresh eyes to say, hey, here's your shot, here's what I'm looking for from you. And so I try to do that with all the players who are new coming in, to say, here's what I'm looking for from you, here's our expectations, and then now can you go meet them? But you do have a fresh start here. And so I wanted to make sure I was very clear with him and with others on that, to know, hey, you're not bringing anything else from another club with you. All you're getting evaluated on is from what I see. And so that's why I'm so pleased with the start that he's on. He's really putting forth the effort to do it.
Dave. The percentage may change a bit if Hurts doesn't play, but their big play capability, is it as prolific and as varied as any offense you face this year?
Well, that's good. For this year, I would say it has to be. They've got catch and run plays. They've got shots down the field. They've got runners that really are patient and know how to make explosive plays from there. But that is the thing. And then, certainly a tight end they do. So this is a team that is capable of hitting explosives just about anywhere on the field, because of their ability to make plays in space and create. So I've got a lot of respect for how they run their offense.
Michael. Adam Dirty was a big part of Jordan Mailata's journey to the NFL. Have you and Adam spoke much about Jordan?
Yeah, he's certainly proud of him, and I am too, just knowing him through AD. But what a remarkable story, one that's just filled with grit and toughness and finding a way. And as he looked back, from people who are, coming up in Australia, and hopefully the IPP is going to expand even more into Australia. I can't think of a better example than Jordan, for a kid who's coming up to say, okay, I may have not done the traditional route, and the IPP's helping some of these kids get to college, which obviously that's the best pathway. That's their way to develop and go. You can imagine how difficult it is to not play and then all of a sudden go into the NFL and say, give it a go, see what happens. So it's challenging, but he, above all, in my opinion, have been the best example of what it could look like. And he's really become an excellent tackle in this league.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, you guys have a good one.